Well, hello, everybody. Hello. My condolences, Harold.
Oh, thanks.
And I'm so glad to be here with you and the executive board. I thought I would just talk a bit about history and talk about where we are and say a word I think you all know what's at stake. But I think there's even more at stake than any of us can possibly imagine. So you mentioned the bill of many years ago. So I thought I would ask, that was in 1965. Anybody here a firefighter in 1965? I was hopeful that Danny Delgado might be with us.
I missed by 1 year, 66.
All right. Harold comes close. What was the average wage for a firefighter when you started?
$5,680 a year.
$5,680 a year. That's where we were. That's where we were in 1964, 1965, and 1966. There wasn't a single state that had a comprehensive bill that provided bargaining rights for public employees. Not a single state. There was one state, Connecticut, that had the beginnings. But essentially, for public employees, there was no seat at the table. And I'll tell you how I got started on this. I was a labor lawyer. The Carpenters Union, as I remember it, represented both employees, there were two, at a public university. And so they said to me, Sandy, let's talk to Wayne State about recognizing the Carpenters Union as the bargaining representative for those two employees. So I called up Wayne State, and I talked to the lawyer, and he said, I have to get back with you. And then a few days later, as I remembered, he came back and he said to me, we can't recognize the union for those two workers. And I said, why not? I said to him, you sign contracts for the construction of buildings and you're bound by them. Why can't you represent or let be represented the Carpenters Union for those two employees, negotiate a contract, and be bound by it? He said to me, well, that's not the law. I said, what's the basis of that? Believe it or not, what he said to me was, it's old English common law that has carried over into the law of this country and this state, and that is that the king can do no wrong. The king can do no wrong. Essentially, it was impossible, he said, under the law of the state of Michigan, for a public employer to recognize the representative of a union, enter into a contract, and be bound by it. Public employees essentially were voiceless. That was in 1964. It so happened there was an election. I decided to run for the state senate. I was elected. There was such a turnover that year that Democrats took over as a majority in the state senate for the first time since the Depression. And I, as a freshman, was able to chair the labor committee. I left my law firm, and I decided my number one objective was to change the law of Michigan so that public employers no longer acted like kings, but acted like Americans, responsible and willing to give employees a voice at the bargaining table. And here it was just a year before, and there were two firefighters who were in the middle of that fight in Lansing, Michigan. In the middle of that fight. There was no one more active than those two people, Cy Chappell, who passed away, and Danny Delgado. They were there every day representing the firefighters of the state of Michigan. So we sat down and wrote a law, and I was in my early 30s, and I had the opportunity, the necessity to sit down with the governor of Michigan, George Romney. And we sat down and worked it out, and we brought it up before the Senate, and it passed the state Senate with only one dissenting vote. With only one dissenting vote. And so now let's skip ahead to where we are today. Let's skip ahead. Essentially, we have governors and other people in this country, in a state like Wisconsin, thinking that they, instead of democratically elected governors of their state, they're acting like kings, and we need to take the crowns off the head of those people and say to them, so I talk about history because we're now at a point today where there is a basic threat to the right of public employees to have a voice at the table. And I think we need to take this seriously. The governors of a number of states, led by the governor of Wisconsin, are not only trying to turn the clock back, but to rip off the hands of that clock. I think we need to take it seriously. The right of public employees to have a bargaining representative, to bargain collectively, and have them and the employer bound by it, has become a proud part of the American tradition. And we need to go out and fight to make sure that that American tradition remains part of Americana in this year of 2011. We have to do that. So let me say just something else about what's at stake. There was an article in the Washington Post just a few days ago that spelled this out. And I just want to recite it because essentially what the article says, that this is a fight beyond benefits. This is a fight as to what will be the texture of American politics in the years ahead. And so this article goes on to say, after stating that, it says, indeed, according to a number of political science studies, the efforts by unions to get sympathetic voters to the polls was one of the main forces behind the rates of voter turnout, regardless of income, in the decades just after World War II. Unions also carried the battle beyond the battle box. Organized labor was on the front lines during the struggle, and you mentioned this, Harold, for universal health care. We would not have passed the health care bill last year except for the power of the labor movement joining your voices to say to the people of this country, every single American has the right to health care, every single American. And then it goes on, and the fight for Medicare for the aged. They were main champions of organizing rights for workers and of the gradual transformation of Social Security into a strong foundation for a dignified retirement. Unions even lent crucial support for the civil rights movement, leading one great congressional champion to say, we would never have passed the Civil Rights Act without labor. They had the muscle, the other civil rights groups did not. And then they go on to say, decades of research have shown that the economic pyramid is flatter in countries where unions are stronger. Despite the efforts, despite the declines, labor continues to be the only large-scale membership organization consistently representing Americans of moderate means on pocketbook matters. While other civic groups, from fraternal organizations to women's federations, have virtually disappeared, labor is battered but still standing. And then I close with this. It may seem ironic that unions are under attack when Washington seems most disconnected from the economic needs of the middle class. But that's not an irony, it's a strategy. Critics of unions such as Governor Walker want to cut government and reduce taxes on the wealthy, and they would much prefer to do it without unions calling them to account. So this is really what the struggle is all about. You come every year for your legislative conference. Every year you talk issues. Every year after you finish, you come to the Hill. Every year there seems to be a set of critical issues. My statement to all of us here today is that this is an unusual year. This is a year where the future of the American labor movement is really at stake. The American labor movement, I come from Michigan. I go door to door in my district, very middle class. Without people being organized, without people having a voice at the table, there would not have been developed in the state of Michigan and in this country a strong middle class. The labor movement was instrumental in building the middle class of America, and darn it all, we need to stand up and fight to maintain the voice of labor, because at stake is the middle class of the United States of America. You know, so many times I was once a state chair, I talked about we're being at a crossroads. I confess I use that term time and time again. I look back at previous elections, and there were times when America was at a crossroads. I think this is an unusual point, a unique moment in our history. There is an effort essentially to divide, and there is an effort essentially to turn back the clock. So I come today to thank you, Harold, and all the executive board and all of you, what you have done, all the fights that you've undertaken, all the battles won and lost. But this year is unique, and next year even more so, because unless we fight back, unless we make clear that the right to bargain is an important piece of the democratic processes of this country, we're going to see all of what we've done, or so much, essentially eliminated. What's at stake is Social Security. They want to privatize. What's at stake is Medicare. They want to voucherize it. What is at stake is Medicaid. They simply want to send it back to the states and let them do their best. What's at stake is really the democratic processes. What's at stake is whether the wealthy will go unregulated. What is at stake is whether essentially the wealthy will continue to gain the benefits of prosperity before and when it returns, or whether the vast majority of Americans will be able to continue on the path of sharing the benefits of American democracy. So as you go forth, you're going to go to the Hill. If I could provide one bit of advice, spend just a few minutes with your friends. Go see those who aren't. Look them in the eye and ask them and say to them, I'm a firefighter. I'm important for the security of the people you represent. I'm important for the safety of the people you represent. I want a voice. I want to be at the table. I don't want the employer to essentially exercise the role of a king. This is America. It's not 17th century Britain. Look them in the eye. Ask for a straight answer. Ask them point blank, do you support my right to be represented? And have them give you a yes or a no. Because depending on how many yeses there are in this country will depend on the fate of basic democratic rights in the middle class of America. Good luck. Give them hell. Thank you.